Hello and welcome. My name is Lars Rambäck and I'm one of the co-authors of the anchor modeling technique. And today we will be looking at an ETL framework that we built that sort of plugs into an anchor model, which makes it much easier to load data into the anchor models. So the first thing we're going to look at is actually how to find this framework and download it. So I'm going to start a web browser and we're going to go to GitHub because this is open source like everything else we do. So you go to GitHub and search and you type Sisula, which is one of the languages that we used to actually program in when we created this framework, and search for that. You will see that you will find one project here, and if I click it, I will end up in the Sisula page, and you can also see here that it's in the ETL branch. So there are a number of releases. It has 5 releases here. So if you click on the releases, you will find the downloadable packages of this. So we have this one, which is version 104, which is the current version, even though it's been available for a while. So I'm going to click this here and download the zip file. Even though it says source code, these are actually the binaries. There's actually no difference between the source code and binaries because this is written in JScript, which is Microsoft's version of JavaScript, so it's an interpreted language. So I'm going to click it here. This also means that it's using something called the Windows scripting host when you run this, and Windows scripting host is available in all recent versions of Windows, I would say over the last 10 years at least, so you can run this in pretty much any Windows you'd like. So now it's downloaded. I'm going to open the folder here, and as you can see I have a zip file here, which is the ETL framework. It comes with some examples that we're going to look at as well. It's not that big, only 300 kilobytes. So I'm going to extract all of these files and let's put them somewhere else. For example, let's put it on the desktop. That's good. Select extract. Okay, so now I have this folder here on the desktop, Sisula. If I open the folder, you can see it contains a lot of different files. Basically, how this ETL framework runs is that it's metadata driven, and your metadata, the ones that's driving the framework, is found in these XML files, source XML, target XML, and workflow XML. The workflow XML is what actually is used to generate SQL Server agent jobs. So this is the corresponding generated SQL code, for target mapping, generated SQL code for source management. So we'll look closer at that in a little bit. So let's see. Now the framework is downloaded. We have it here. There's something called run all. It's a small bat script. So this is an executable that you can use to run the framework. And when you run it, what it does, it will generate these SQL files, and then it will have to take these SQL files and execute them in the desired database where you want to have the code. Like I said, it's using something called Sisula, which is our own language. So you have a lot of Sisulets here. So for example, if you look at the target Sisulets, there's a number of Sisula code here. Sisulets, and they do different things, create different parts of the generated SQL code, and the Sisulator here, it's the one who's doing actually all the work, parsing the syslets and the input file, this one, the XML, and that produces the SQL output. All right, so that's a very, very brief introduction to how you download this and a short description of the files. Oh, perhaps I should mention as well, if you look at here, you have something called data. Right now we have some example files just so you have something that you can look at that shows you how the framework is, how it works. So there are some comma separated files here about collisions in Manhattan for different months. So it's between May and August of 2014, these collisions. So we're also going to be looking closer at what they look like later on. And metadata, the framework will, when you later run it to load source files like the ones we saw into the database, the framework will store a lot of metadata that you can use to track what's going on. This is the model, traffic model. It's a small anchor model that corresponds to the collision data that we want to load. And finally we had something called code here. We had to create our own type checking function because none of the ones that are built into SQL Server were good enough for our purposes. So this is sort of a general purpose type checking function written in .NET. So it runs in the common language runtime of the SQL Server as well. And you will see that the framework is pretty flexible with respect to what types of files you can actually load with it. So I think I'm going to stop here, and we'll continue in another video with actually looking closer at the different parts and running the framework.